Cheers.
Cheers. Today on Garage Bar Gaming, we're going to go over how heat works and how heat's built up. And then we're going to compare the old stuff to the new stuff, because there's been a rule change in 30 some years. Alright, so movement and firing weapons activity basically builds up heat. That's your basic limiting factor on what you can do each and every turn. Each mech comes with a certain amount of heat sinks, and the number of heat sinks depends on the loadout of that individual mech and or how many heat sinks the mech warrior chooses to build into their custom mech. Okay, so the basic gist of it is that each action, running, walking, jumping, attempting to stand, firing weapons, all generates heat. So walking generates 1 heat, running generates 2 heat, jumping generates a minimum of 3 heat, and for every hex, it generates a minimum of 3 heats, but 1 heat per hex of MP spent in the jump. So an example, if you jump 1 through 3, you build 3 heat. If you jump 4, you build 4. If you jump 6, you would build 6 heat. Firing weapons, each weapon has its own amount of heat that it generates. For example, a PPC will generate 10 points of heat per shot, where a machine gun is 0. You have your heat scales on the new sheets. They're built in, so you've got medium laser is 3, your machine guns are 0. On the old sheets, that's not included. How you dissipate heat is by the number of heat sinks that you have. So in your heat phase, what you do is you add up the total amount of heat that you generated over that turn. So if you, in the case of this Warhammer here, if you fired both PPCs, he would generate 20 heat. He's only got 18 heat sinks, and let's say he, for whatever reason, decided to run, so he's got a buildup of 22 heat points. He's only got 18 heat sinks, so he'd have a surplus of 2 heat at the end of the heat phase. That's where your heat scale comes in. And every time you have a surplus of heat, you continually go up your heat scale. Now, at certain points, heat will start to cause negative effects. Negative movement modifiers, positive modifiers to hit, will cause the vehicle or the mech to shut down, cause ammo explosions. If your engine is hit, your first engine hit will add 5 heat per round. If your engine is hit second time, it'll add 10 heat, a total of 10 heat per round. Now, there are chances that if you go into the extended rules, you can your pilot can take damage, wounds based on how much heat is the mech's generating. Now, both the new and the old basically build up heat the same. How heat sinks are assigned, we've noticed, is different between the older game and the newer game. In the older game, doesn't matter the size of the engine. It was assumption that every mech in its engine had 10 heat sinks, and then any external heat sinks after that were added in your critical hit table. With the new version of the game, the size of your engine determines how many heat sinks you have. In the old game, everybody just had the assumption that there was 10, and then anything above 10 was listed in your critical hit table. Now with the new, you've got to figure out your engine size to find out how many heat sinks that you have in your engine. Now within the rule book, there is a table that tells you how many heat sinks you can have in your engine. Down here, your integral heat sink table. That'll tell you your engine rating. Now your engine rating is the tonnage of your mech times how fast you want to walk, and that'll get your engine rating. And then this table will tell you how many heat sinks you have. Now the sheets themselves will tell you that as well. In this case, this one has 10 single heat sinks. So based on the tonnage, you're going to find 4. I believe there's a 5th one in here somewhere. All of the extra heat sinks will be listed above what's in the engine. Now in the old system, it's the same, but the assumption was there was 10, and then you can count up your 8 heat sinks within your critical hit table. Okay. So in this example here, with this Thunderbolt, we have a tonnage of 65 times 4 gives us an engine rating of 260. Let me go over to our table here in the book, if I could find it. Okay, so a 260 rated engine is going to have exactly 10 heat sinks. Where if we were to use this Warhammer as an example, it would end up being a 280, which would give it 11 heat sinks. Now this is the old sheet, so it accounts for all 8 of the heat sinks in the critical hit table. So you just got to be aware of which generation of the game you're playing and which generation of the sheet you're using. Now, it's not too difficult to modify from one to the other. You just have to be aware of, if you're using the older sheets and the newer rule book, that you've got to be aware of that discrepancy, or vice versa. Ideally, you'd stick with this within the same generation. Now, this is the rule book from, I believe, the early 2000s. Let's see, when was this trademarked? Okay, never mind, 1996. And this is the brand new one as of 2018. This sheet comes from the original 92 manual, or from the 1992 edition of the game. One of the things you need to know as well is that any heat sink that's submerged in water has double the efficiency, and you can up to 6 points of heat can be dissipated if you're in level 1 water and your heat sinks are in your legs, or if you're in level 2 water, or if you're laying prone in level 1 water. However many heat sinks are submerged, you will be able to have a double value of dissipating heat per turn, up to 6 additional heat points. Terrain, in the extended rules, terrain modifiers will have an effect. If you're on a cold planet, those are generally advanced in house rules, or if you're on a hot planet, that'll make them less effective at dissipating heat, but again, advanced in house rules. All right, thank you for joining us with Garage Bar Gaming today.